Happy Friday. Okay, I'm going to read you this email. I think some of you will not identify with this at all. Some of you will identify with this a lot. She says, I've been making progress at fighting off my restrictive eating impulses, but in the last few days I repeatedly got waylaid by my perfectionism and drive to self-punish through deprivation. I made a couple of different mistakes at work, nothing huge, but it doesn't take much, and then immediately felt overwhelmed by self-critical thoughts and the idea that I must punish myself through restriction. Now, even though I can enforce not restriction on total calories, what I particularly struggle with is restricting pleasure. In other words, if I make a mistake, I can't allow any food that is a particular treat or a favorite item for at least the rest of the day. And so I'm going to leave that at that and then just talk about that bit that she wrote there, because like I said, for some people, sorry, I'm just putting the laptop down. For some people, that's going to really resonate. And for some people, it'll be like, I don't know what that is. Some of you might listen to the podcast that I do, and a while ago, probably late last year, I did a podcast with Cynthia Bulick, and we were talking about the genetic locus that they found for anorexia nervosa. And also, I was asking her, because it's always been one of my observations in myself and with plenty of people that I worked with, that many people with anorexia have a very strong OCD type component. And for some people it seems totally unrelated, like they may have a very strong contamination OCD component. For some of us, like me, it's very strong to do with the movement or the exercise. And for some people it can sort of lead into that perfectionism. But what does seem to also run true for many of us who do have this OCD component is that if we do something wrong, and it can be unrelated to the food. So if you, for me, a big one would be, say if I did something wrong, like I was a workaholic. So say if I accidentally didn't see a sub shift go up at work on the board where people post if they want a shift covered. If I didn't see that and I wasn't the first one to get it, then and someone else got it, then I would punish myself. And I hate the word punish, but I don't know what else to use. No, punish isn't right. I would try and make up for it, relieve the anxiety of I didn't do that, I didn't get that shift, by eating less or running more, which you would think eating less or running more, that's not related to the work thing. But it all was. It's like I had these things that I was really, if something went wrong, that would be the way that I would make it better, make it right. And it sounds really messed up because it's fucked up. And I'm really glad my brain doesn't work like that anymore. Because you know what? I make tons of mistakes all the time and it's tiring. It's nice to be able to just let them go. But anyway, with the conversation that I had with Dr. Bulick, with the research on the genetic locus for anorexia nervosa, she said it lies really close to the genetic sort of clusters stuff for OCD. So the way I see it is that anorexia, if you have anorexia, then there's all of these other kind of like genetic influences that may or may not mean that you develop an OCD type component to that, may or may not mean that you get kind of more compulsive and about things, because some people really don't. They have anorexia, but they don't have any of the OCD type stuff that I had so much of. So I feel like that's what that comes into. It's just this sort of like, it's like in every given day, what it felt like to me was the balance had to be the same. And that balance wasn't just in like the energy I gave out and the energy that I took in. It was also to do with the things that I did right or wrong, and if I did something that affected that energy balance. So like for me to explain the work thing, it's still an energy balance, because if I worked more money would come in, and money is a form of energy. And so, for example, if I missed a shift that I could have had at work, it would make sense in my brain for me to make that right by burning off more energy or eating less energy. And I know when I say that out loud, it doesn't really make sense, but I think for a few of you, or at least a lot of you listening to this, that's going to make sense. And after a while, it just becomes this learned thing that your brain, it goes to, so in this example that this person wrote in, she made a mistake at work. She didn't elaborate as to what that was. I don't know. You put a pen in the wrong desk drawer. I don't know. You make a mistake at work and your brain automatically says, like, you're not allowed to have that thing that you like to make up for that. That does sound like punishment, doesn't it? But I sort of get it. It's also negative state relief more than punishment, because if you don't have that thing that feels like a reward, then you actually feel calmer and like the day is sort of balanced out or something like that. But anyway, so after a while of doing that sort of thing, it can become just a learned response. It can become just this neural pathway that your brain has set up, that if X happens, Y has to happen. If I don't do X, I'm not allowed to do Y. And that's just a learned neural pathway. And so in recovery, the rewiring aspect to that is doing just the opposite thing. So you make a mistake at work and your brain says to you, you can't have that chocolate bar after work. Do you know what you do? You eat 2 fucking chocolate bars after work to show your brain that that thought was not relevant. Your brain will learn that that thought was not relevant because you didn't follow it. If, however, you do not have the chocolate bar after work, you just informed your brain that that thought was correct because your actions were to confirm that thought. So this is why taking the opposite action is so important. Ultimately, it doesn't matter where the original neural pathway originated from. It doesn't matter why your brain initially formed that, did that the one time and then kept on doing it. After years, that doesn't matter. You've just got to work on teaching your brain that, no brain, thank you very much. That doesn't happen anymore. I don't have to do that anymore. If I make a mistake at work, I don't have to not eat the foods that I like. And your brain will learn that to be true, because your brain's only doing what you taught it. When your brain throws up that thought of you can't have this because you didn't do well enough, it's only doing that because you taught it via your actions of not allowing yourself to have things when you didn't do well enough. And so recovery, a lot of this rewiring stuff is just retraining your brain, because your brain will learn, because it's magnificent like that. If you do the work retraining it, that's not doing what it's been taught to do by your eating disorder, then it will learn. Of course, on top of that, you have to eat. You have to gain weight. You can do all the retraining you want in the world, but if you are in energy deficit, it's not going to do you much good. You have to gain weight as well, which is when we come back to rehabilitate, rewire, recover. You've got to nutritionally rehabilitate, you've got to rewire your brain to fully recover. These little details, these things that seem so insignificant and like it's not even really a thing, is it? That I don't feel like I can have that thing because I did something wrong. It is a thing. It is important. It's part of your recovery to stop allowing that to happen.